Golly, it's a nice rainy day outside, but at least it's warm. Didn't get too wet coming in here. Hey, who's the ticket man in there? Oh, there you are. George, it's you. For goodness sakes, I haven't seen you forever. Hey, how much is it going to cost me to go from here to Jaffrey? Oh, yeah, I know we have to change trains in Winchendon, but how much is it going to cost me? 34 cents? Ooh, I've only got maybe, let's see, I get just 24 cents. I'm a dime short. What am I going to do? I'll have to go back to Keene. No, oh, you say, you're going to give me the ticket just the same? Well, hey, that's nice of you. Oh, I got to be quiet. Okay, thanks, George.
Maury, you are great. So today we are here in my backyard with Maury Whitney. I'm Jody Turner, and again, we're here at the Troy Depot. This is incredible. You know, doesn't this bring back memories?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. And now, when was your first recollection of being at a train depot?
At a train depot, probably.
Or at a train yard?
Yeah, well, at a train yard, I would say about 6 or 7 years old. My mother, we lived up on Elm Street, and it was just a short walk downtown in Keene. And my mother used to always like to shop at Newberry's, which is right on the corner of Railroad Street and Main Street. And that was also right where the no hump loading marshalling yard for the railroad was, and and the switcher would keep going back and forth. Sometimes they'd hold up the traffic at the main street. They'd have to have a flagman out there holding off the cars. Every once in a while, one of the cars would get a little sick of waiting, and so he'd turn to if he was going north, he'd turn to the left a little bit, go out around the
train.
the train that's there and go by. And I can remember sitting in the stroller and just watching those trains shuffle back and forth like that.
That was like television for you.
Yeah, it was more than television because I was right there. And you know, and the bells would be clanging as the switcher would be going back over the street, and then he'd give his signals for, you know, stop or back up. And after that, shortly after that, I can remember, I was 8 years old. That would have been 1937, no, 8 years old and 37. No, that would have been at 39. Sorry about that. the juice up here is getting a little mixed up.
That's okay.
But
that's okay.
no, I was about 8 years old, and I used to always go to, if I was left alone, my mother went in shopping anywhere, I'd go down to the railroad shops and watch and see what they're doing down there. And first time I went down there, she kind of scolded me, but after that, she always knew where to find me if I was downtown, and sometimes she'd even say, well, you can go to the depot and watch the trains, and I'll be over in a little while.
And you're like, yes.
And it's strange. You wouldn't think of leaving a child alone like that today.
Right, no.
I mean, it's really too bad. But no, this is a wonderful set here in Troy. It's all been redone. I understand this used to be an apartment house for people to live in, but they've done a wonderful job of reconstructing it as it was a depot in the early 30s, 40s. The depot itself was built in 1847, and that was just before the railroad came to Keene. In fact, let's see, there's two more stops between here and Keene. There's one at Webb Depot, and then the next one would be at Jocelyn, which is at South Keene. And there was quite a little manufacturing done in Jocelyn, and also they used to almost call the center of Keene over where the the name of that road there. I can't think of the name of that road, but where the road ties onto Route 12, and there would be quite a bit of manufacturing right down through there. There's still a dam over on gosh, I can't think of the name of that that road that goes across there from Route 101 to Route 12. But
Swanzey Factory Road?
Swanzey Factory, you got it.
Okay,
Yeah. And there was quite a bit of manufacturing going on there.
Right.
And later on, the trolley came in, and that was brought right to the what they used to call the wreck. And there was they had roller skating and dancing and wrestling.
That was down at Wilson Pond?
That was at Wilson. That was at Wilson Pond. And then when the trolley disbanded, you know, the trolley ran for something like about 27 years, And give a guess as to how much money you think they made in that 27 years.
Oh, I have no idea. Because I don't know how much, what did it cost to ride a trolley?
Oh, it was about 8 cents.
Yeah.
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 But for the complete time that the trolley in Keene was in use, till it was disbanded, the net profit was $250.
Really?
Yeah. They were really hindered by being overtaxed, and year after year, in fact, after some of the later years, they got tax refunds for I don't know if they considered overcharge, but I guess they were just trying to keep the trolley in business.
Yeah.
But it finally folded.
Well, the trolley did give people a little bit of a chance to be able to get places.
Oh,
though.
absolutely!
Yeah.
It went from Marlboro out all the way out to Wheelock Park,
Right.
and then it came from Main Street in Keene down to the wreck in Swanzey.
Yeah.
And it was quite a conveyance for a lot of workers that were coming down into Swanzey to
Right.
work near the factory road.
Yeah, in the mills and yeah. You know, so this depot in particular opened up in 1847. Now, in that time, oh, and I want to tell you guys also, when I asked Maury to help me with this show, I said, so Maury, they've done some renovations in Troy on the depot, and I said, so have you been down there lately? And he said, well, you know, yeah, I've been down there. It was a while back, but I think it was 1940. Now, 1940 was a ways back.
Yeah, it was.
But this depot has gone through a lot of renovations. Like you said, it had been an apartment building for a short while, and it's unbelievable to see all of the renovations that they've done to this to get it back to what it was. And they are so lucky that they still have the ticket window here. I believe this is the original ticket window too. And then they've got photographs on the walls that will show you the different things that they've gone through. So why don't we take a seat and we'll go through some of the memorabilia that we've got here. So we just sat down, we're waiting for the train. And what can I expect on this trip?
On this trip, oh, it's raining outside right now, so you're going to have to close your windows in that Pullman car. And then it's kind of warm too, so that begins to make you perspire. So you have to find out, what do you want to do? Do you want to get covered with soot, or do you want to stop the perspiration? And sometimes it becomes a mad situation as to just which one you want to do. But aside from that, they've done a wonderful job here in the restoration of this. And they even have this man's hat, the conductor's hat. And a lot of people think that the engineer who has the hand on the throttle and the whistle and everything else ran the train. But he didn't. It's the conductor that has charge of the train and tells where it's going and when it's coming back or whatever. And what he would do is, if he didn't have a station master, he would have to come in and with a bell walk around and ring the bell so that get everybody's attention, and then he'd reel off where the train is going to service. If it's going north, it would be, he would say something like train number so and so, what number it was, going north to Webb Depot, Jocelyn, and into Keene. Eventually we'd hit the summit in Mount Gilboa and Westmoreland and get all the way up into Walpole. But that's a little bit far from here. But right now, as soon as you bought your ticket, it seems like, I don't know why, but everybody, the minute they bought their ticket, they went somewhere and sat down. They might not have stayed there more than a minute or two, but that's what they did. And I can remember being in one of the train stations. I can't remember if it was Keene or Bellis Falls, and I sat as a youngster in one of these wide seats, and I thought to myself, gosh, how come they got such big wide seats?
You don't think they're so wide nowadays?
No, after I grew up and got to be an adult, and then, well, it even changed way before that, because Aunt Millie, she filled up the seat pretty well. Now, they also had, when you brought your baggage to the station, so a lot of it would be trunks. In the 1800s, people carried these great big trunks with them everywhere they went, and all their personal items were in that trunk. And there was something about those trunks, you didn't touch them. You didn't dare touch somebody else's truck. You showed them that much respect, and nobody else touched yours. And because all your personal belongings were in that trunk. Well, this this baggage master here, he would get the baggage from the if it was in the 1800s from your wagon, your buggy that brought you to the station, and put it on one of the high wheel express carriers. And from there, the bed of the express wagon was just about the same height as the railroad car was, and they would swap it off there and bring out the ones for people who were sitting here and put them on the train, and the ones that are getting off the train here would come back out. And that was this gentleman's name right here, the baggage master. And I can remember in probably 1940, I would say. I was in this station in 1940. I don't have very much recollection of it. And we absolutely were going to, just as I mentioned in the first part of the movie here, that we were going to Jaffrey. And so your baggage would come off here, and then the next, because the train you came to here on was heading down to Pittsburgh probably. And so you'd have to get on another train that would take you to Winchendon, which is the next stop down, I believe. No, State Line comes in first, but and Fitzwilliam comes in before that. But they would have to swap trains there. Your baggage and trunk would go there, and then you'd go north, probably up to as far as Jaffrey. And although the line kept going up to Hancock and all the way through into Concord eventually. But that was a completely different line at all. That was the Peterborough-Worcester line. And we're running at this time on that. We were running on the Fitchburg line, which was later mostly all Boston and Maine. Now, now the Winchendon station was a real huge transition depot, because a lot of people came to Winchendon, Keene, Troy, and got on buses or wagons that took them to Mount Monadnock.
Right.
And there was Mount Monadnock is one of the most climbed mountains in the world, and it has a tree line and everything. That's fine. But we went to Winchendon, changed trains, and got to Jaffrey. I don't know what we went over there for, but we were there. Now, during from time while this station was built in 1847, from that time until about 1920s, there was a real a large amount of people going from small stations to another. You might be here in Troy, and you need to get to Fitzwilliam, which is just a short ways down the road. But if you took your horse and wagon, it would take you half a day to get there.
Right. And
with the train, you're down there in just a few minutes. And then there was a time when they were laying this in 1847. Prior to that, they had the surveyors had it surveyed to run from the state line, which is at the line, to run over towards Richmond and back down to Keene that way. And that would have left this area here without any rail service at all. And there was quite a discussion about it. But finally, a stockholder of the railroad, who owned, I believe he owned the Fitzwilliam Inn, said, "We want you to come to Fitzwilliam." And they said, "Well, there's an awful lot of cuts up through that way." And, he said he didn't care. He says, "We want you to come to Fitzwilliam." So even at that time, they didn't get the depot in Fitzwilliam. It's about a mile or so lower in elevation, because the trains couldn't get up there.
Right.
Get up there, had enough to climb to get from State Line to Fitzwilliam. And so then they made all of these cuts through from here all the way up, mostly to Bells Falls. And those cuts are some of the most extensive and beautiful works at the time of railroad construction in all of New England.
Right. Now, how did they build all of these? They didn't have all this heavy equipment, did they?
No, they all of this was built by hand, and they with a with a cold chisel and a hammer, they drill the holes into the the rock, or with the big sledgehammers with larger drills. No automatic drills, nothing of that sort. No forklifts to lift anything up. It had to be cut down to the size they could handle, and they drill the holes, fill them full of the black powder, and split the stones that way. I had just for the fun of it. This might be a little bit different, but not for the railroad. I had an opportunity. I had about a 2,000-pound piece of granite, and it was going into a historical marker. But the bottom of it was tapered so that they couldn't set it in the ground properly. So it had to be squared off at the ground. Well, I took the chisels and what they call feathers, and I drilled the holes by hand in that particular granite block to cut off a 300-pound piece of it. And I worked on it for about 40 hours, not all at the same time, but I worked on it for about 40 hours and cut that off by hand. And it's really simple. You don't have to chisel an awful lot. But these guys had to shovel, 60-foot cuts in places.
Right.
And
Over on Route 12, I think, on your way to Walpole, there's an area near where the recycling center is in Keene, and it looks like a tunnel almost, because they had to cut all of that granite out of there in order for the train to get through.
Yeah, and that was solid in through there. And I think, I'm not really sure, but I think the Summit Depot was just past there. Just past the recycle place there. You go over a little bridge where the railroad goes in underneath, and just a short ways past there, there's a level spot, and across the road is an old sugar house. And I think the depot was in there, but that's the only place. But they did have a Summit siding that had something like about 20 cars on the siding, and that was before you got to that large cut you were talking about. And I mentioned once that on these cuts that if you're a railroad person and you want to stand at the side of the railroad bed and watch the ghost trains go by, that would be the only place you'd be able to see them, would be where those cuts are, because most of the other rail line has been torn up and abandoned, and there are trees growing into lots of it. Right. And originally they wanted to run a spur line from Keene to Brattleboro, and then it would connect with the West River Railroad that goes up the West River. But the mountains, as we know, all the mountains over there was too much for them to go by. Yeah. But this little place in Troy was unique. It was a hustling, bustling place. They were outside our windows. We could see there were probably about 4 or maybe even 5 sidings where cars could be kept for unloading and whatnot. Now, during the Second World War, there were room on all of the sidings between Bellows Falls and Ashburnham. There were room enough there for freight cars, for about 500 freight cars. Wow. And what they would do, sometimes the shuffle would get stalled up in Boston because this stuff had to go on ship. And so it would get backed up, but they couldn't stop manufacturing. So what they had to do is until the area got free by the shipyard, they stored all of these cars on the sidings.
So would that be the stockyard or the storage yard? Or?
No, that would just be a siding at least at each place.
A siding is, what is a siding?
A siding is a place where trains can pass, for one thing, but quite often they're used for storage of freight cars. And each station has so many freight cars that they can handle. I mean, Keene's yard at that time, when they were really back in the 40s, they could handle about 350 to 400 freight cars in the Keene yard. Wow. And so it would be funny. You'd see all of these freight cars packed in every single siding all the way up down the route. Then all of a sudden they got free down in Boston to load them on a ship. Zoom, they're all gone. I mean, it was really quite something.
Yeah. So back early, before they had telephones and things like that, I'm sure they used telegraph. But how did they communicate before that? Did they have lights or something, or lanterns, or what did they do?
Well, they had the signals on the. Gosh, you can't. First, they had semaphore signals, and then they had the signals that they could operate from inside the depot, so the depot master wouldn't have to go out in the rain, and he would operate that, and it was an arm that went up like this with different lights on it, and the red light would mean that the train could not pass that area. There was probably another train on the road somewhere, or it was just being halted there to get the schedule going. I mean, they always used to like to say that the trains are always on schedule, but lots of times they got
they were on train schedule.
They were. I can remember coming from Windsor, Vermont one summer, and my sister and I were coming home, and we sat in the West Claremont yard up there for about 3 hours while they were having a lot of other more important things than people that needed to get south. That was during the war too. Yeah. But here in Troy, they've got a manufacturing outlet right here in Troy, and then of course they had the granite quarries that were here, and the railroad used those granite quarries as they went along. Excuse me. Before the railroad was constructed, of course, the surveyors had to come through, and the surveyors found out where the granite outcroppings were. And so, as the railroad moved along, they used what was available there, and so it saved them a lot in transportation of granite, which was heavy stuff.
Right. So I'm really interested about the granite, and I think what we'd like to do is do that on another show, because I think we could fill an entire show on granite. But what were some of the other products that they used to move through the railroads? Because I know that in Troy, they actually had a place where they can download automobiles. Yeah. They used to take automobiles off.
Yeah, they would have. That was the early automobiles.
Right.
I don't think the later years, and after probably 1920, I don't think they had many of them shipped by rail here, and because they would have to come all the way. Well, they built some automobies right in Keene.
Really?
Yeah, and I think the first automobile that was built in Hinsdale, and a man put it together with a steam engine and whatnot, and that was the first automobile that was built in the area. Yeah. But in Keene, they had shops there where they built engines, locomotives, and Pullman cars as well, right there in Keene.
Now, was that part of Central Screw, or was that near those buildings?
That was before Central Screw was even thought of.
Yeah.
And it was in the area. They had shops in Keene. They had shops on both sides of the tracks there, and the northern side of the tracks have all been into parking lots. Yeah. And in fact, that's
so all of those would have been holding yards, kind of?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Well, there was the Holbrook Grocery Company, who was right on the corner of St. James Street and Lamson Street. And just to the south of that, there was a Abbott Grocery Company, and they had just enough room between two buildings to bring the freight cars in there to unload.
I wonder if that is near where Whitney Brothers is now, because it looks like a train would have gone through between the two buildings, where Princess Shoe was and the Whitney Brothers building. Yeah. That looks like a place where they would have loaded.
Those buildings were, golly, I can't think right offhand what those buildings were taken by. Beaver Mills. They were originally built by Beaver Mills, where the Princess Shoe is in that area. And that whole area down there was really a teeming business way back into the 1850, before the railroad came in. About that time, the population of Keene was only about 3,000.
Right. Well, I think that the railroad had a lot to do with bringing a lot of people in. Now, here, they had the woolen mill.
Yeah, they had the woolen
and
mill.
So that must have been a huge thing to get blankets to people during the wars or in Boston and different places that they could transport things to now.
And it was I don't know if we mentioned it, but it was quite a stop-off point for people going to Monadnock.
Right.
And and it was a busy little town here.
Yep.
And I would say they probably had. I don't think they had every train came through stopped. I think they had something like about 4 trains a day that would stop here. And I've got I think I got a timetable over there somewhere, but I think excuse me. I think it was about 4 trains a day came through here, and over the years that means a lot of railroad work. Excuse me.
So that meant a lot for the railroads for a lot of activity for the railroads.
It, not only that, but it made the area where the railroad went through vibrant, and you know.
Oh yeah.
And because all of these areas up through here, Fitzwilliam, Troy, and Webb's Depot, and which we'll get into the granite on the Webb Depot. That's all they had there really, and some of the magnificent structures that they made in the area have all disappeared, and it's really too bad for historical state. But as the railroad progressed along the surveyed line, the surveyors had already picked out outcroppings of where that they could get their granite from.
Yeah.
And of course they had to have wood. And if you notice any of the older pictures of the area here, don't look just at the little situation in the front. Look at the background, and you'll see almost all of the mountains and hills are denuded because
there was no trees.
No, they had taken trees up by the. Well, they used to call it. I mean, he still do cord, but he used to take trees by the ton to keep those going.
Right.
And then up until about 1908, 1910, they switched most of it all to coal.
Right.
And they also had larger locomotives then. The wood burners were the small ones that first started coming into Keene. They had four up front wheel trucks and 4 drivers, and so they were considered as 4 O's. And it would take 2 of them to get anything, even hardly empty cars back from Boston to north of here.
Wow. Well, so Maury, we've got a lot more to talk about.
Yeah, we sure have.
So our half hour is just about finished. So I think we're going to have to run this into another program. So stop right there.
Yeah.
And I want you to stay tuned for part 2 of the Troy Depot and more information with Maury about railroads in the area. There is so much to talk about. So please join us again in my backyard. In the meantime, if you'd like to contact us, you can email us at inmybackyardch8@gmail.com, and we'll be happy to get back to you. So that bell, I hear that bell ringing, and we're gonna catch that train, and we hope you will too. So we'll see you soon again in my backyard.
All aboard for Jocelyn, Keene, Gilboa, and points north.
I'm on that train.